Welcome to week 10. This week we'll finish our work with JavaScript and prepare ourselves for the last 7 weeks where we'll be covering jQuery, a JavaScript library. A couple of applications are presented this week that will reflect the possibilities of how jQuery can help us. And one of them is an image slideshow. This week we're talking about links, images, and timers. Now, all of this has been covered in lectures, so this week I'm going to cover 2 specific applications that are presented in the book and how JavaScript would take care of them. The first is what you see before you, which is a rotating slideshow. You see the timers going pretty fast. Well, we'll show you how to do this in JavaScript and set us up for next week when we're going to be doing it in jQuery. The other example demonstration this week is the image swap, the famed image gallery type application, where we simply click, 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 and on each click we'll be putting the main picture in the center of the page. So let's start by looking at the code for the slideshow. Specifically, Slideshow JS is what we're looking at. So what I'm going to do is take my JavaScript and we're going to copy and paste, and I'm going to put it inside the HTML so you can directly see how it affects the code and how our setup is. So right here we see script type JavaScript, Slideshow JS. You're also going to start to see the use strict tag. There's a separate video this week on what this does and also how to lint your code. Everything else should be pretty straightforward as we've been over it. For example, the declaration of the $sign as being equal to the ability to grab something by an ID. Well, when we get to jQuery, we'll notice that the jQuery object does something very similar, and that's where we're setting this up. So let's take a look at our HTML first. We have an unordered list of all the images that we can click on to bring our main image into the section here. So by default, we have images release JPEG, catch and release as the caption. And on each turn of the loop here, we're going to put the title attribute as the first child of the H2. We can do this simply by saying onClick, replace the source image. One could easily do that. I could say something like, onClick equals, and then just place the image in here. I could do document.getElementById, and we'll do image, and we'll do .source, and simply make it equal to images release JPEG. I mean, in a nutshell, isn't that what this application does? OnClick, get the element by ID, which is the main image here, and make it the source attribute of this equal to this. Sure, we can do that, but we want to make it completely dynamic. That would facilitate the ability to add more pictures. When the user wants to add more pictures, all he or she has to do is add another list item. So let's talk about the code now. So at the top, we're declaring variables for everything we need in this. This will help you with process and how to create an application. You want to declare your variables at the top for everything you want to control. Well, who are the players in our stage? There's a list of images, there's a caption, and then there's the main image. Then we'll need a variable that equals all the links. Something to loop around. If you remember, down here we have a link inside each one of these list items in the unordered list. Okay, that said, if we have something that references those links and something to loop around, now we can create variables for everything else. Specifically, the fact that we'll be looping each specific link node and a variable for the image itself. So on line 21, we've created an array called the image cache. And what we're going to be doing is loading these images live. We've preloaded images not only in this course, but in the HTML CSS course, where we create an image object, but we don't necessarily load the image to be visible yet. Anyway, as we loop around each one of these links, which is all of the links in the list item, now we have to be a little bit cautious here, because if another link gets added to the page, it will be added to this this list. So this has to be the only element on the page. Otherwise, we have to get these tag names through the DOM by loading a unique ID. So if someone added a new link, what we can do is just access it by grabbing image list and then A. So that's how we could grab it in case someone adds new links. Anyway, for each link node, and you can log this. If we console.log each link node, it would simply be the first anchor tag, the second, etc., etc. Now this is creating a new image. This is part of the preload image functionality. And for each one of these images, we can create a source. And the source attribute for the image can be equal to the get attribute for the link node. So we're being very dynamic here. If our link node is images release JPEG, we're creating an image for that. Similarly, we're getting the title from the attribute title of each one of those anchor tags. Now we'll have the values we need, and we can create an image cache for every image. So however long the image cache length is, which remember we're going to be continually adding on. So we're basically, on the first turn of the loop, the length will be 0. On the second, 1. Then 2, then 3. And each one of these will be equal to the image. Because right now, there is no image cache, and so it's 0. But once we add an image to that image cache, guess what? On the next turn of the loop, it will be 1. Then 2, then 3, then 4. So now we have an array of images that we can use to create our slideshow. We start by grabbing a counter. We also have to set up a set interval. In week 8, we introduced timers. I've renewed that video and put it again in this week's folder as well, in case you need a reminder of what set interval does. Set interval will simply call a function at a given time. So in this case, we're calling it at 2000, which is a little bit fast. Then inside function, we've got our function itself. Okay, so there's some challenging code in here for those of you who maybe haven't mastered your operators. Basically, the counter itself has a remainder. That's what this modulus operator does. Modulus is simply the remainder of something. So if I were to console.log 5 modulus 3, that would be equal to 2. Because 5 divided by 3 leaves a remainder of 2. So this is always the remainder. So let's say on this function, and we have the image counter, we're incrementing that, and it's modulus of whatever the length of the cache is. Now remember, the modulus is the remainder, so the image cache length at this point has already been created. So it will be equal to 4, because there are 4 images. Okay? So basically 0 modulus 4, then 1 modulus 4, 2 modulus 4, 3 modulus 4, and then 4 modulus 4. So basically that's the counter. Okay? And so for each one of these, we're going to take the image of each one, make the source of our image node equal to the image source off each one of these things, and then make the caption node value of the first child of caption equal to the title. So that means inside here's the caption, and there's the first child. So my only beef with this right now is that it's a little bit fast, but are there other ways to do this? There certainly are. And right now I've got it at 4 seconds, so it's a little bit slower, but there are definitely other ways to do it, but this is a very good way to do it because it preloads the images into the browser history so that we can, or into the web page on the browser, so that it's there when the slideshow starts. And that's a nice thing when dealing with images. You want to be able to do that, do preloading of images. Anyway, that's this application. But when we get to jQuery, you'll see that there are built-in functions for things like this that we do repetitively.